the thing that comes the absolute easiest to you should be the very thing you should charge the most for. Why? Because you have the least amount of effort to produce the maximum amount of output at any point. It didn't matter, Jimmy, if you called me and said 10 minutes before, yo, I need you to come on this call and I need you to do your thing. I put on a jacket and I'm there. I don't have to think about it. I don't even need the information. I'm going to have the context clues as I go and still slay. It came so natural to me.
Welcome to Impact Us All, the business podcast for making substantial change. I'm your host, Jimmy Newson, the Impact Influencer. Join me as I explore the stories, strategies, and insights of entrepreneurs, industry experts, and national and global brands that care. We focus on the initiatives that make a significant difference in communities around the world and bring you innovative techniques for overcoming challenges and barriers in your business journey. This is a place for real-world lessons, actionable advice, and inspiring insights to help you elevate your unique selling proposition for professional and personal growth. Stay tuned as we dive into this week's impactful strategies. Let's move forward together, because together we can impact us all. In this episode, please allow me to introduce you to our amazing guest, Troy Sandidge. Troy is a global speaker and MC, experiential growth strategist, fractional CMO, award-winning podcaster, 3X founder, and so much more. So please welcome Troy Sandidge. All right, all. Jimmy Newson here, the Impact Influencer. And if I got an amazing treat for you today, I have an amazing, super amazing young man. And I say that because he's probably like a couple years younger than me. I don't know. We actually haven't gotten that far. But I will say that he is a very good friend, a very good colleague. You know, we've met and he's been a great support for my organization. And I'm looking forward to everything that he's doing in his business. He has an amazing podcast called I Digress. If you haven't checked it out, you need to check it out. He is the host, at least for the last couple of years, or the co-host of Inbound. If anybody's familiar with Inbound and HubSpot, that's a huge gig. That's an amazing opportunity. And for them to choose him, I know people who've gotten turned down just to speak. So, you know, and I'm not going to spoil it because I want Troy to tell you himself a little bit more about him. So first of all, Troy, thank you for deciding to be here with me today.
Big brother Jimmy, I appreciate you to the highs and thank you for having me.
All right. So he called me Big Brother, which means I'm old.
No, you're black don't crack, y'all. We look great on here.
And you know it.
Visually, you know it.
Well, I appreciate you being here. So before we get into our topic, as usual, of impact, start by giving us a little bit more about you. Talk to us about your journey. So then there's context as we start to have this conversation around impact.
Oh, 100%. I think impact is definitely born from your experiences. And so a little about me, I'm a former electrical engineer, turned digital marketer, turned growth strategist. So I've paved the way in a multitude of things. I've done everything from nonprofit work to working in SaaS and tech. I worked with the White House. In combination with that, I worked in politics. So I have a very, very unique, diverse background of experiences, but that's also given me the honor and privilege to see the vantage points of where impact subsets and overlaps in a multitude of ways because of those diverse experiences. I'm currently now a fractional CMO and the co-founder, managing partner at Season 3 Media with my business partner, Christina Kay. And ironically enough, our business is all about impact and community through empowering small businesses, mid-cap, enterprise from growth strategy level, but we're anchoring that with DEIBA and how we're moving and navigating psychologically to helping these businesses expand and grow community as well.
Wow. Now, you didn't mention your podcast. Tell me a little bit about that, too, because that's an amazing show. I've listened to quite a few episodes.
Thank you. Well, as of this moment, I will be recording episode 100 after this. So it has been 3 years in the making, and the journey, when I shared this with people, I said I had three things. It's only going to be me as a solo host.
Okay.
It's going to be no longer than 30 minutes, and I'm going to be unapologetically myself. And by that, I mean I didn't see a lot. This is why I love this podcast and what you're doing, Jimmy, is because as I was coming along in my career, I didn't see too many people of color who had specifically a podcast platform that were educating and expressing, you know how we are, in the mannerism which we would understand. They're using mannerisms and examples and correlations that we can grasp. And I thought growing up into my career, I had to learn the hard way. I had to first learn what they're saying, translate it, and then simplify it. And when I think of a lot of these other businesses who, you know, maybe they're not marketers, they're, you know, beauticians, they're accountants, they're engineers, they're startups. They don't have the marketing acumen, and they may not have the access or availability or the time to grasp and translate. And so that's what even caused the I Digress podcast mission. I said, I want to break it down in a way that I would just talk to people at the barbershop. Explain the most complex growth marketing thing. Explain to me how sales work. Explain to me why community matters, like I'm in the barbershop. Like you would just go full energetic mode, or you just make it very simple, make it very plain, use examples that I can understand. Sure, the podcast is for everybody, but the intent of the voice behind it was specifically to help BIPOC entrepreneurs and marketers.
Gotcha. And that makes sense. And, you know, and I think about my past and, you know, not having certain conversations at the dinner table, you know, and, you know, all of this stuff can seem very far from you, far-fetched, and sometimes unbelievable. You're like, I don't believe that can happen. And then when you finally see it happen, one thing that I've noticed, and maybe you have too, is it's actually a lot simpler now that I understand it than before. It seemed like magic before. Now it just makes sense. Do you know what I'm saying?
I align with that 100%. Yes.
You know, so yeah, so I appreciate everything that you're doing. You know, you are responsible for one of moving forward small businesses' first sponsors, you know, just from your validation of us. So I still want to continue to thank you for that, you know. So and that's what it's all about, is supporting each other and being able to communicate and have those conversations that you normally wouldn't have with individuals, and how we might be able to navigate this business sphere. And I'm excited around, you know, at this time of 2024, you know, of the, you know, when you talk about DEIB or anything like that, you know, part of that is, you know, getting the system to work better with us. But the other half is technology has given us such a great opportunity, if we can take advantage of it, to continue to even pave our own way and not wait as long, because now you have multiple paths to success.
Right.
You know.
100%.
So let's get into it. So before we can even get started into really having that conversation, define to me what impact means to you.
Impact to me is taking either your talent or your ability or your vision, and you're applying that to be a bridge for the greater good of the whole.
Okay.
And that's how I see impact. And the caveat I say to that, the benefit of the whole that predominantly leaves a lasting positive residual. It's not one-time thing and that's it. The goal of impact is to make those ripples that constantly get bigger and wider as you keep starting as the nuclear source.
Love it. Love it. So with that in mind, what motivated you to go in the path that you've gone? You talked about some of the things you've done, but give me more of a linear timeline. What motivated you? What were there key moments in your life that pointed you in one direction over another as you took these, as you mapped out who Troy is?
It's a phenomenal question. I think it all starts with that first wall of resistance. Unfortunately, I can't recall this because I was just born, but I was born 2 pounds, 2 ounces, 3 months premature.
Wow.
So I came out the womb fighting, if you will. But fast forward to my recollection, especially in business, was thinking under this pretense that, hey, if you just do the job, get the degree, You're going to find a job right away that's going to make your life whole. And I learned relatively quickly that a job and a paycheck doesn't necessarily mean you're going to leave impact. Now, I'll let that sit for a minute for those who may not grasp that. And again, we all molecularly have different levels of empathy in how much we want to impact. People have passion to serve, and some people are built to serve. There are two different things with that, and that's not to guilt trip anybody. For my own personal journey and self, early on in my career, I stayed more, I won't say the word survival, but more so in the background, trying to just not make too much noise, again, not trying to make too many ripples, and realizing there comes a point in everybody's journey that either you're going to keep sitting on the bench and saying, oh, I wish this would change, I wish things could be different, or you're going to get off that bench, get in the starting lineup, and deal with the friction and the obstacle that comes in your way in the hopes that you can make impact for the people behind you. And that is a very difficult thing when you realize that can impact your paycheck. That can impact your pocketbooks. That can impact where you go in your career, how much money you make. And you have to find this balance of not being too selfless in your pursuit of impact, that you're taking away from yourself and your livelihood and those you love, but at the same time, understanding it's a pathway to break through, to leave that legacy impact or whatever is calling or driving you. So I said all that to say, I've been in corporate for a very long time. And then I switched to agency for a very long time. I did nonprofit for a good combination. And all three of those sectors, I found levels of impact. I found levels of self-validation, self-worth, seeing literally what my impact is doing for others financially, or on the back end of what the company or agency or brand served for the impact of food, education, access, all the subset of things. But at the end of the day, I realized what I wanted to do the most, I had to take control of. I couldn't put that in the hands of a subset of another entity, another brand to do it, because I realized it had to come from me at a place that made sense. So as my career expanded, and again, when I echoed early on the different journeys, I didn't even go really deep into that at the moment. I reflect on that. And the whole time, everyone wants to make some more money. But I find when you align with what your impact truly is, everything else will actually come because you're really good at this thing. You were built and equipped to do this thing. We're all chasing that thing. And I've been an engineer, I've been a marketer, I've been a growth strategist. Back then in the day, what I love the most, regardless of the running joke, you can put any word in front of marketing and it's a whole new subset of thing. Whatever the case might be, at the end of the day, I want to help people do more than what they thought they could by giving the access or the infrastructure or the blueprint to do it, as my core as an empathetic strategist. And whether what title I have or what playground I play in didn't matter. As long as, kind of like the basketball player, as long as I could play ball, shoot some hoops somewhere, it didn't matter where. Blacktop, sand, didn't matter. I'm going to get the ball to hoop some type of way. And that's kind of how, at this point in my career, I've been approaching business in the pursuit of impact.
Wow. That's there's a lot there, and we're going to hopefully unpack as much as we possibly can. But since we're still on the topic of you for a second, I love your moniker, strategy hacker. So you're going to have to tell me a little bit about that and tell the audience a little bit about that. Who gave it to you? What does it mean? How does it play as the strategy part of Troy?
I'm trying to be like the impact influencer. I've been trying to chase you. I'm Kobe trying to chase Michael Jordan over on this podcast, brother. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I feel good answering that question because I'm just like, now I'm curious.
Well, and I'm not ashamed to say it, but back in the day, I literally branded myself as the hardest working workaholic you've never heard of. You go in the Wayback Machine, you will find me projecting that all over the place, like a robotic workaholic person that I need to be reprogrammed that I was, but I digress. Since then, when I first got into social media marketing, obviously back then it was all about how can you get people to remember you? Yep. And that's where Find Troy came from. And so to a point where it stuck, people loved it. And this is the thing where you got to learn in business and strategy. Just because a certain small set of people say they love it don't mean that should be anything more than what it was. But y'all, I took the majority of the few and not the majority of the whole. And I created Find Troy Marketing Solutions in my first full real LLC. Didn't really go anywhere. And the name was the reason, quite frankly. And so after a while, I went to the drawing board and I said, okay, I need to dismantle and reset myself. People put me in a box. I didn't want to play in. I love social media. It wasn't making me any money. It wasn't breaking anything. It was 10 times more work for little no pay, and it's still at it today, unfortunately. But that's where I was back in 2016. And so I put 2 years. Just what is it? What is it? And I realized I love strategy so much. I was naturally good at it.
Okay.
And quite frankly, the easiest advice I've learned is if it's something comes very easy to you, that's probably the thing you should charge the most for and do all the time.
I love that.
I didn't know that for the longest time. I thought I had to earn my way. Again, the hardest working workaholic you never heard of was my calling card.
I need you to say that again. Say that was, I love that. Say that again, please.
The thing that comes the absolute easiest to you should be the very thing you should charge the most for. Why? Because you have the least amount of effort to produce the maximum amount of output at any point. It didn't matter, Jimmy, if you called me and said 10 minutes before, yo, I need you to come on this call and I need you to do your thing. I put on a jacket and I'm there. I don't have to think about it. I don't even need the information. I'm going to have the context clues as I go and still slay. It came so natural to me. And I'm like, that's what you need to charge the most for. You don't have to, it shouldn't, and again, this is also coming from an 8-to-5 worker bee mentality. And when you break that, you realize it shouldn't be any friction between the magic sauce that I do and what I output. The most friction is probably trying to acquire clients or attention or awareness in the beginning or what the case may be. But when you got that sauce and then you know you with the stuff in that area, it's going to happen. Now, I figured, I was like, what am I going to do? And I had a life coach and we were going through different things, all that stuff. And eventually I was like, well, you're on Namecheap, and I'm one of those people that be like going through domains for hours and thinking of combinations of all the different businesses you're going to create. I know y'all watching and listening. I know y'all out there, y'all my tribe. Every year I done bought domains and I said, there's going to be a new app, it's going to be a new website, I'm going to sell it. And then it never happens. I'm hoarding for a year or 2 years and then let it go. But I digress. The whole point is, came around, I was like, I love strategy. And I'm like, how I think of things as a hacker, this is where my engineering background comes in, because we're always reverse engineering. You're always trying to think through and all the different variables. I would say my brain is like Dr. Strange. I'm looking at all the variables trying to see how can we navigate this. And lo and behold, when I created Strategy Hackers, again, I had Strategy Hacker as my moniker and Strategy Hackers with the plural S as the business. I will never forget this. I put that on a document, Google Doc.
Okay.
I wasn't getting clients. It was a slow period in my life right at that time. I remember sending that to somebody with the name on it. And they signed it and said, yeah, we'll do it. That's how I knew the name mattered. I didn't have no website yet. I didn't have nothing. I put an idea and a quote on a piece of paper with Strategy Hacker was the worst version logo I ever had, but it was on there. Sent that to them, and they said, yeah.
Okay.
And I did it again. They said, yeah. And again, I think I might have got 3. No website, no social, nothing. And I said, sometimes people, and can I be real to my BIPOC and minority businesses, sometimes it's not about, I want to stand out so much in a certain way. It has to land to the buyer, the people you're trying to reach out to, not you and your own manifestation of what you think this means. And they're going to understand all the deep notes of why you said it, which most people will never know why it's called the way it's called. But if they can understand it and correlate it to something, you either create interest, curiosity, or ultimately, I want to choose you. I want to have a conversation and choose you. And when I did that, it made all the difference. And it's stuck. But the last thing I'd say on that name and why naming is so important, it didn't limit me.
Right. And I think that's power right there.
Right.
Longevity. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I realized I'm a person who doesn't like to be in a box. I like to navigate. Early on, I was all social media strategy. And that was it. Eventually, obviously, I went to full scale, full stack marketing, team marketing, whatever you want to apply in that way. And then eventually I'm like, you know what? Let me go another step higher. Let me go to growth. And I've gone another step higher than that. Let me apply growth with DEIB undertones and a psychological kind of pathway component to this thing. But it's never, since that name changed, it's never limit my ability or pivot with the market. You either meet the demand of the market or you create the demand of the market. And sometimes your name can limit you on both.
Okay. All right. So now you got those first few clients, Strategy Hacker is now starting to come into its own. And you've done a lot. I mean, I looked here, it says that you generated over $175 million in revenue for businesses. So without that in mind, talk to me about what impact has your business been able to have on other businesses or in the community in general? Maybe something specific or, so let's go in that direction.
Sure. Two things scream at me from the jump. One was helping a lot of international businesses and startups penetrate into the U.S. market to get market share. That's something I'm incredibly proud of. And honestly, it's very fun to work with businesses that come from different cultures. And honestly, challenge you to see the U.S. market a little bit differently and how to navigate. And you have much more appreciation for those who immigrate to the United States or those who build business in the United States, especially if it's not their first language. And I think all the caveats of that, I've been so grateful to help a lot of businesses navigate that specifically, what comes to mind. And the second one definitely is near and dear to my heart is helping those within the community to get their businesses off the ground, whether they are an SMB or they're nonprofit. It's less about money, honestly, in many of those cases, and it's more about literally the joy of seeing someone who had an idea, who had this calling they couldn't let go, go back to their family and saying, hey, I'm making money doing what I absolutely love to do. And I realized, after the pandemic, I think a lot of people woke up out of the mirage and it was like, I only have one life to live on this earth. I should be able to do what I absolutely love to do, and in the hopes that it can make you money. And that is one of the most, as an entrepreneur, that's one of the hardest things, because you're chasing this balance of, I want to do what I really want to do more than anything in the world, but I have to take care of a family. I got to take care of myself. I got to try to create for my own 401k, pay for my own health care. I got real bills, and it's hard to break through. And so me being able to be that catalyst in any way, shape, or form to help businesses break through that and get enough money where I can do what I love to do more than anything else would make me the happiest.
Well, and a lot of small businesses do struggle with this, especially at the earlier stages. So can you give me maybe one or two things that they should do immediately that might help them? Because that is a tough space to be in. And it is very difficult, trying to be an entrepreneur when you do have so much on your shoulder that it's not like you can just shrug it off.
Right. I always say, don't try to be so unique from the jump. It doesn't work. You have to be familiar enough that people can say, okay. And then as you break through, you can evolve and expand as you have more profit share and stability. But when you're starting out, people try to do too much. They focus more on the branding, and again, I'm one of the biggest visionaries you'll ever meet on this planet. I promise you. But even after enough knocks to the head, realize put vision in a certain bucket and put reality in a certain bucket. And you have to find that balance. If it doesn't put a time limit on everything.
Okay.
If it doesn't make you X amount of money by a certain time with only a certain amount of effort, that either tells you what you're saying doesn't make sense, you're talking to the wrong people, or how you have currently positioned what you're trying to offer makes no sense in the marketplace. So you have less of a risk and, you're more of a testing. And the second thing I would say is twofold. For those who don't know, I'm neurodivergent. I'm also very on acronyms and mnemonics and things for people to easily remember and understand. And so I'll drop two here. Everyone has a cup. They have a cup. For those who are watching, I'm holding a cup.
I got a cup.
And in that cup, you're looking at what is my capacity, what is my utility, and what is my performance. What is your capacity to start this business? With the utility of what you have on hand or what you can afford to apply, and what is your performance? How are you going to measure and define your success? And then within that cup, you got to add stuff to the cup, and add is being audience dictates direction. If you know your cup and you apply add, you're always at least going to be in the right place to move in the right direction, because the audience is literally telling you, this is terrible. We don't want it. It don't make sense. And I have to say this to everybody I work with many times, not everybody is wrong. Oh, they just don't see my vision, Troy. They just can't grasp it. I am literally navigating through that right now with Season 3 Media, trying to do something totally different that most people haven't connected all the dots between all that.
Okay.
And the most common problem is you have to explain it in a way that people understand.
Okay.
And sometimes that's taking some off the top, and let's just start with the basics.
Right.
And then build on top as you go. I always say this, a vision is given to you. I don't have the same vision that you have. Until you let me know, I won't even know what the vision is. But I won't know the complexities of how you arrive to that vision and what's pulling you so hard to do it until you tell me. But even then, you have to give it to me in doses. You have to give it in a way that I can sit with it, understand it, agree with it, and either be a buyer for you, an advocate for you, or elevator for you. And that's a hard thing for a lot of people to come across.
Wow. It just reminds me of a quote that I got from one of my mentors, and I'm not sure if he was the one that created it, so I'm not going to give credit unless, of course, he did. And if he did, great. He said, the great thing about entrepreneurs is they fall in love with their ideas. The bad thing about entrepreneurs is they fall in love with their ideas. I always got such a chuckle out of that, because when is enough? When is enough enough? We're taught to never give up, but then you can be enthusiastically going in the wrong direction. So
100%.
yeah, I love what you're saying there. What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs looking to create more impact in their business?
I always ask the question when it comes to that, is this a nonprofit play where you're doing it for the greater good with no residuals coming to you? Or are you trying to make impact while in addition or adjacent making profits? Is this an impact and profit play or just impact only play? No judgment. There's no wrong answer. It just tells you how are you going to navigate and move. If it's just a pure impact play with no profitability anchoring tied to it, you can go all in because you don't have to worry about this also generating money for you to sustain yourself. Assumably you have another business or you're working for another company or you're well off where you're now doing this purely for the greater good of your own self and investing your own money or other people's money or donations to do that, and that's fine. But if you're trying to do that while also making profits, I won't reference a certain thing, but I'll say it this way. You can't take care of somebody else unless you take care of yourself. And so you are actually hindering yourself from making the maximum amount of impact if you don't take care of yourself. If these athletes didn't take care of their body, so they weren't getting sick, and they're not in peak performance, we ain't gonna see no Steph Curry making all these threes. I'm literally in Indianapolis enjoying NBA All-Star weekend, and these folk, we ain't talking about the All-Star game, that's a whole other thing. But everything else, these folk have to be in peak performance to do what they do. Otherwise, it doesn't work. It's the same thing with impact. If you are not, a colleague of mine used to say, if you're not, entrepreneurs are digital athletes. You have to be mentally strong. You have to be prepared. You have to be disciplined. You have to be poised under pressure. You have to see the vision amongst all the clouds in the universe and pursue this thing while pivoting accordingly. And it's taxating. So if you don't have a sustainability place in play, your impact that you want to do so badly will not be at its greatest apex. So you have to take care of yourself first if you're going to profitability. Now you can leave an impact. You're saying, hey, 10% of the profits that I make will go toward this, or 25% of what we're doing is free for this or whatever as you're growing. There's ways. It doesn't have to be all in on the beginning. You just have to know what that makes sense for you to pursue your maximum impact.
And so let's talk about that a little bit more. So, let's say you're giving 10% away or 25% away. What does that do for you as a business? How does that how does that place you in the world as a business? I hope I'm asking that question clear enough.
I understand. Yeah.
Okay.
So obviously now, they did a study, 91% of people are all about if the brand doesn't align with their perception, they ain't buying. They ain't supporting. Folk will go miles further to choose another store simply because that store aligns better with their values. And so many times, if what you're presenting as, hey, this is how we're giving back while we're making money, can actually be a standalone campaign that actually helps you attract more people to help you make more money, to help you make more people happy and a bigger impact. And, people say, well, marketing, why would I do that? I said, in perpetuity, it's a great thing. If it aligns or your audience very well, Zappos does it very well. What they say, for every shoe that you buy, they donate a shoe over here. All these many brands do these things where they say, hey, this is going to go to this, or better yet, they'll say this, help us reach our goal. And they'll set a set number, 100,000, 500,000, $1 million. And as they grow and do their things, and now, again, for those who are mid-cap and lower, who's the consumers paying for a $25 product, maybe a $250 product, $1 million to donations seems big, but they may be a $500 million company and they're giving away, 1%. I'm not to judge the optics of the numbers. I'm just saying there's very efficient ways to give impact and tie that into your business model to benefit yourself and the impact of what you deem worthy for your business to serve.
Wow. And that's great because it does what you just described there is another form of marketing, because you were like, when you mentioned that they're like, well, but marketing, you're like, but this is marketing. And it's just like running an ad, because you still got to spend money somewhere. This is just you spending money differently. Yeah, I love that.
And the great thing is you're giving consumers the power of choice to delegate, where's my money going to go to? And that is some dynamic power. And when your consumers or your audience still feel empowered while still spending money on you, service, product, whatever, that's a phenomenal dynamic to have as a relationship with you as a provider or to your consumer or audience base.
Absolutely. Okay. So what has been your biggest challenge when it comes to creating lasting impact?
I think one of the biggest challenges, this might sound a little offbeat, but I'm going to go with it. So here we go.
Okay.
Is human error.
Okay.
Imagine, again, I've never been a parent, so I don't know the phenomenon, but I've been an observer. So let's put it that way.
Okay.
And you've invested a lot in this child. And if my parents are watching, I'm sure they love and watch everything that I do. They're probably watching like, what are you going to say? And they go in a little different direction than maybe you've invested all this time and energy to go into. Are you disappointed that they didn't stay on the track that you wanted? Or are you cool with they're pursuing something out of the outcome? And I've realized, and I had to learn this, when you're trying to make an impact, many times you can't determine specifically where that outcome may go all the way through. And I think we can be in this facade that we think we can, and it's not true. Many times we may, not to make anything depressed, but let's say this, we're donating X amount of dollars to this fund to do this thing to help this particular group of individuals. Oh, we look up a year later, the numbers for the impact is still going up. So the money and the energy that we've invested didn't put a dent in what we thought. So the outcome that we thought was going to happen from the impact that we're doing wasn't nearly as close as what we thought it was. Mm-hmm. But if we take a step back from the outcome of it and look at it from the pure level of what the impact did do, it did its job. And I had to separate myself from that dynamic. And once I came to that agreement in that, it made it a lot easier to give and do for impact, knowing that this is moving things along. It is making change. It is doing all these different things and touching all these different hands. That doesn't necessarily mean my impact alone will be enough to sustain or suffice. And that's where collaboration comes in, and that's where bigger efforts come in as well. But for me, I realized that was one of my biggest holdups, thinking the impact that I'm doing is going to be linear and cut through all the noise instead of just some of the noise.
Sure. So it is definitely, I guess beyond just doing something just to do it, is being fully invested in it so you can understand all the elements and, and understand the bigger picture. Don't just volunteer for a soup kitchen. Understand what's going on behind the behind all of that noise, so you can understand that, not only that impact, but, the people that are involved, all of the elements that evolve in that world. So, it just makes a better experience, So then tell me about your most proudest moment. But there's one or it's a couple, I don't know. I'm sure you've had quite a few. I mean, I've been watching your journey over the last couple of years just continue to just astound.
Well, since you brought up Inbound, I'll spend a minute on that and I'll go to a wider one. The first time I've been a 2-time host of Inbound, 2023 and 2022. In 2022, again, I was in the HubSpot community circles. I'd never really used HubSpot or anything of that. So I don't have no connection to HubSpot or the community, to be fair. But someone had reached out to me and I could say, hey, do you want this opportunity? It was literally like a month before. Actually, the person was Christina Gardet, and I appreciate you and love you dearly. It was a month before. And I said, I ain't never did this before.
Wow.
I've never done this in my entire life.
All right, I'm impressed.
And you're talking on one of the biggest, as a marketer, especially if you're in B2B, Inbound is one of, if not the biggest conference that people want to aspire to speak at and all of that. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, wait, you want me to do what? And I didn't even realize the significance of it until I got there. It didn't hit me. This was the year that President Barack Obama, Viola Davis, Emma Green, all these different individuals were there. And I was like, I'm willing to bet on myself. And I said, I bet you if I deliver on this right, it could literally change the trajectory of my career and do a lot of different things for me. Mm-hmm. I was scared out of my mind. I tell you, I had to be the worst imposter syndrome I've ever had in my life. And I don't normally line up with that. But I should have to say that I was scared out of my mind. I've never done it before. I'm doing it on one of the biggest stages, if not the biggest stage of my career. To this point, most people at this audience never heard who I was. They didn't know who I was. Yes, my podcast, I digress, is part of the Hustle Podcast Network, so there was some correlation there, but nothing of that. And I'm going through this thing, and it's a 3-day thing. So I'm going through it. I'm doing my thing. But I'll say this, though. On Obama Day, that was Viola Davis was in the morning, which I tell the story all the time. I cried.
Oh,
That lady has the presence. You just feel it. And she said I
yeah, she
was the
seems no
future.
joke.
She put her hand on my shoulder. She was after she did the most phenomenal talk. She was still talking with me and Dr. Marcus after. But I said all this to say the reason why that was so impactful was, again, I started in electrical engineering. My family is blue collar, and all they've ever wanted was for me to be successful. But they always wanted to be successful in a place that they knew could make money, and that was on the covers of social media. That was new to everybody. Social media wasn't the thing, and to be able to be at that event, at the apex of this marketing conference, I paid for my parents to come. They've never seen me speak to that point. And they got to be engulfed in that world fully.
Sure.
And them sitting there, seeing me do my thing. I never forgot coming back the last time, one of the last time they got the text. I was like, did they come? Are they okay from Boston? They've been to Boston before. They gave me the text message. Hey, we just saw you. You did great. And I'm over here like, oh my God, oh my God. And then we got to sit with them watching President Barack Obama. And got to see Viola Davis. My book, y'all. Viola Davis had a book signing that day at the Black and Inbound activation. My book, which I had just launched, was actually there too at the activation. And I had a picture with her book signed and my book signed at the same place. I said, my book has walked the same pathway Viola Davis' book has walked. I went through a whole journey. But I should have to saying, again, when people say the $175+ million and I'm worked with 135 brands, all these different things, that's great. And that's real numbers.
Right.
But when I think of the even deeper impact that roots me in my core is me knowing that, hey, my parents, I pursued something you might not understand. Here's what I've done. And now they see it. They're my biggest fans. They watch everything I do. If it's a flop, they're going to tell me. It's going to hurt my feelings, but it's okay. But I think that for me as an entrepreneur, that core thing that, hey, you did your thing as a child, you can mark that off your list. Like, you were meant to do this. You are the strategy hacker. Like, you are the impact influencer. You are that person. This is your calling. That is one of the most powerful impacts for me that inspires me to make a bigger impact and continue to do this thing because I know this is what I'm meant to do. And the other thing, the last thing I'd say, because that was way longer than I anticipated.
It was
But you know how this
inspiring
give him 5
story.
more minutes, Pastor. Give him 5 more minutes. I would say, I will never forget this moment. I had to figure out how to market a business for products we don't own, navigate NDAs, navigate not mentioning the brand, the NT or anything, and do that in a way that actually drives and attracts more business and more profit. So I used to be, I didn't have the title, but essentially I was the marketing director of this company, a contract manufacturer, and they make the products for the other products. So if you have an Apple phone, someone made that phone, and now it's being sent to the Apple distributor, and they put the brand on. You may not know who the creator is, but that's what they did. And so they did a lot of that. And so we were trying to capture new business. And I said, why don't we tell the stories of the impact? I'm not even kidding. Literally, the campaign was called Making Products That Matter. That's what I came up with.
Okay.
And we pushed the content out, explaining the impact that these products had did. And that was it. We didn't tie an affiliation to it. We didn't say we made all the subset of microchips and processors and all that stuff. And do you know that campaign brought in more business for that brand, had higher SEO equivalency than their own website, to a point where they came to us and thanked us and gave us the permission to credit them in promoting the product because we were actually generating more sales for them by literally telling the story and impact of their product. Fetal heart rate monitor, which went out to help premature babies and pregnant women, all these different things like that. We pushed that out there. Solar home machine to help people who didn't have electricity, push that story out there. And it created more demand because we did the storytelling and still did everything intact legally, broke no things in marketing. And because of that, we actually were able to attract more business for the people we already work with, and then without having the name brand tied to the product. And to me, and I did that super early in my career. So I've been chasing that same high and I ain't got it since. But that's the two things I'm happy about.
Yo, that's amazing. It makes me think about just, adding another, if you want to call it a label, impact campaigns, making that a thing. That's what makes me think about this whole process where you're purposely going, you have to focus on, well, what's the impact? And it does take it back to now, putting it back into the minds of those that need to use it versus you trying to push a product, push the product, which they don't really care about. They care about a solution. They care about solving the problem. And I love that electronics can be pretty complicated pieces of tools, but you put a massive human touch on it even back then just by focusing on, the human element of, well, why? Why? You talk about the heart monitor. Well, we know why. That's something that's easily relatable to, even if I've never gone through it myself, I still understand the importance of that. That's power. That's powerful. Congratulations on that. All right, man, we could talk for hours. And I want to talk for hours, but people are like, yo, Jimmy, I got stuff to do. I'm even watching this on 2X right now, and I still got stuff to do. So what's it going to be? All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and, first of all, I'm going to say I'm going to need to have you back because I'm sure we can go even more in depth, and I'm sure you're going to have more amazing stories to share. But I'm going to leave. I have two questions for you, and they're both personally related to you, and then we're going to wrap up here. So, question number one: what is your secret weapon when it comes to getting things done? Yeah, it's like that.
I'm neurodivergent, y'all. So I have a lot of different things that has failed me in getting things done. Create a false sense of urgency. The due date isn't when it's due. The due date is now. The due date is in a certain window of time that if you kind of mess up and you put on more than you can chew that week or that day, oh my God, you're giving yourself some grace. But I would say time blocking. The number one thing. Time blocking with explicitly, because sometimes we can just say, do podcasts. We can say, write this thing. We can say, follow up. No. Be very specific with what you're saying you need to do within that window. If I'm saying I need to create a new episode, research that episode, record 25 minutes, review it. Be very specific because that's going to hold you accountable to the tangible task you have to do that's going to add up to that full thing being completed.
Wow. I love that. And quick plug, we actually have in our community, a time blocking, time batching and task something training. So that goes into that. And that is a powerful, yeah, exactly. That's power. And so then here's my other question. What is your superpower?
Oh, man. Well, I guess because I'm the strategy hack, I don't know. I'd say, my superpower is taking complexity and simplifying it into actionable steps designed to achieve a goal. No matter where I've worked, no matter what I've done, I've always been able to take complexity and simplify it for other people and for myself, ultimately.
Mm-hmm. I love it. All right. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wanted to touch on?
I've been long-winded today, so I won't cover too much.
Okay.
I would say, what is my why?
Okay.
And I'd say my why is, at this point in my life and my career, is to create a future for myself where I'm in a position and ability to actually leave a bigger impact than I've ever done. But I know to get there, I have to be fully sustainable and good. Otherwise, it can't happen. So my why now is doing that.
Okay. So let's go ahead and close up. And so with how can people get a hold of you? You have a lot of stuff out there that people can find from your podcast, your book, your company. So, tell us a little bit about those elements and how do people get a hold of you?
If you search Find Troy on the internet, I'm Find Troy everywhere you can be. strategistupbook.com is my book. I digress.fm is my podcast. But if you go to Grow with Troy, that's growwithtroy.com. All the links and more to everything is linked there. So growwithtroy.com will find you for everything else.
And of course, it'll be on the show notes as well as in the transcript on the replay page. So make sure you subscribe to Impact Us All, the business podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Give us a 5-star, because if we could, we need to be giving Troy 6 stars up in here right now.
I'm about to give y'all 5 stars right now.
There you go.
Hold yourself accountable.
There you go. Hold you accountable. We're going to take photos, whatnot. Might run some tests. We're going to get our first impact campaign. I'm going to start working on. Thank you, Troy. I appreciate that. I'm going to start working on our first impact campaign, because I absolutely love that, because it makes you get out of the mind of trying to push a product and really focus on how do you really help your community. So I love that. So I credit you for that. And any final thoughts? Any final words for our guests, our listeners?
Listen to the impact influencer and help him have a bigger impact and influence on our community. That's all I got to say.
All right. I can get down with that. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Continue to support us. Continue to follow us, listen, subscribe, and we will hopefully and surely see you in another episode of the Impact Us All Business Podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy Newson, and thank you, Troy, for being here as our amazing guest, and we'll see you all again real soon. And that brings us to the end of another enlightening journey here on the Impact Us All Business Podcast. Every story we've shared, every insight gained, is a step towards creating a world where business becomes a beacon of positive change. Your time with us is more than just listening. It's about becoming part of a movement that values growth, innovation, and the incredible impact we can have when we come together. If you're ready to be a part of this journey every step of the way, we have 3 small favors to ask. 1, please subscribe to our podcast. It's the easiest way to ensure that you never miss an episode filled with stories and strategies that matter to you. 2, leave us a review, even if it's just 1 word. Your feedback helps us grow and continue bringing you content that inspires and empowers. And 3, rate our podcast. Your ratings help others find us, expanding our community of impactors who, just like you, want to make a difference in the world. Every step you take with us is a step towards impactful change. Your voice, your action, and your participation, it all adds up to a global movement. Let's continue to reshape the world, one business, one idea, one story at a time. Together, we can impact us all. See you in the next episode.